Today, I'm going to show you how easy it is to add authentication to a React application. But really quick before we get into it, do you like to win prizes? Do you like to solve real-world problems? Auth0 is hosting their first ever hackathon from August 7th through 9th, where you can work with other developers to solve real-world problems, all while competing for $10,000 worth of prizes. Auth0 is the easiest way for developers to add authentication and build secure applications. For this hackathon, Auth0 has partnered with Microsoft, Amazon, DigitalOcean, Gatsby, Ionic, Vercel, and more. You won't want to miss this. Sign up now to put your skills to the test and tackle world problems like addressing the after effects of COVID-19, security, and connectivity. Sign up now with the link in the description below. Since the sponsor of this video is Auth0, it's only appropriate that we use Auth0 to incorporate authentication into a React app. So let's get straight into it. I have a blank project folder open here, and we're going to open the terminal. And we're going to use npx create React app dot, and that puts it in this current directory. This just takes a minute, so I'll speed the video up. All right, that's done. So let's close the terminal, and we're going to clean it up a bit. So let's go into public. We're going to delete all of these files that we don't need. Now I am expecting you to have some basic knowledge of React and how it works. So we're going to clean this up, and we'll just say React app with Auth0. Save that. Now let's go into our index, and we don't need that. We don't need the service worker, and we don't need any of this. We'll leave everything else the same for now. Then in the app.js, we'll just get rid of all the content here for now. We don't need this logo. Save that. And then the CSS, we're just going to remove everything. We'll come back to that. All right, now that we've got it all cleaned up, the first step actually is going to be to create an Auth0 account and create the application. So let's go to Auth0. All right, now it's not going to cost you anything to sign up. So go ahead and sign up. And once you have signed up, go to applications, and then we're going to create an application. Now name the application whatever you'd like. All right, I'll just name it React Auth Tutorial. And then it's important here that we pick single page application. Then we'll hit create. And then which technology, we'll say React. Next, we'll go to settings. All right, and we're going to need some of this information in just a minute, but for now, let's scroll down. And under allowed callback URLs, we need to add localhost 3000. We'll need this in here during development because what happens is when we go to authenticate, it's actually going to redirect us to Auth0, and Auth0 handles all of the authentication, and then it redirects us back to our website. So we need to authorize our website. During development, it's going to be localhost port 3000. Once this is pushed to production, then you're going to want to change this to your normal domain. Same thing under allowed login URLs and for allowed web origins. At the very bottom, save changes, and then we'll go back up to the top because we're going to need some of this information next. So let's go back to VS Code. The next thing that we're going to do in the root is we're going to create a new file, .env. And then in this env, we're going to add two parameters. The first one is React app Auth0 domain. And the second one is React app Auth0 client ID. And so we go back to Auth0, and we have those here, the domain, and then the client ID. So let's copy that. There's the domain, and then we'll copy the client ID. Of course, your domain and your client ID is going to be different than mine. And after this tutorial, I'm going to delete this, so these will not work for you. All right, now we have our environmental variables set up. We can close that file. The next thing that we'll need to do is let's open the terminal again. And we need to install the Auth0 package. So we'll do npm I at Auth0 / Auth0 React. This is just going to take a second. All right, we can close the terminal. Next, we'll take a look at the index.js. The first thing that we'll do is we're going to create a couple of variables. So we'll say const domain equals process.env. So we're going to grab our environmental variables, and it was React app Auth0 domain. And the next one is const client ID. And that was process env, and then React app Auth0 client ID. All right, now we need to import Auth0. So we'll say import Auth0 provider from at Auth0 React. Right, now we can use this auth provider. So that is going to actually wrap our app. So we can change that out. Now, because this auth provider component uses React context, we'll be able to access all of its properties from within our app. And it's going to take a couple of parameters. So we can say domain, that is going to equal our domain. And then client ID, and that will equal our client ID. And lastly, the redirect URI. That is going to equal window.location.origin. So that's going to pass it our current location, our current URL that's in our browser. And after the login is complete, it's going to direct us back to this URL. All right, and that is all that we need for the index.js. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a login button. So we'll create a component for that. Under source, we'll hit new file. We're going to create a directory as well. Components/LoginButton.js. Right, that created the folder for us as well as the login button. In here, I'm going to use a snippet. So it's RAFCE. This quickly creates a React functional component for us, and it has named it. So in here, we're going to import use Auth0. So this is a hook that Auth0 created, and it's going to come from Auth0 React. Then we can use that hook inside of our function. So we'll say const, and we're going to destructure login with redirect. And that is going to equal our use Auth0 hook. All right, now we want to return, and it's not going to be a div. We're going to return a button. So we could say button, and then on click, we want to have an arrow function here, and then we'll say login with redirect. And then the button will be named login. All right, let's save that. And now we'll go to our app, and we need to import that. So we could just for now, we will take this out and we'll say login button. And we'll just render that for now. All right, we'll save that, and then let's run this. So we'll say npm start. All right, now we have a login button. Let's just pull up our dev tools, make sure that we don't have any errors. I'll zoom in a little bit. All right, so now when we hit login, we should get redirected to our Auth0 login page. And it has already remembered me from already being logged in. We'll log out and log back in just a minute. We'll go ahead and authorize this, and we've been logged in. So now we need to allow the user to log back out as well. So let's go back into VS Code. We can close the terminal. I also have a bit of CSS that we're going to add in here, and I'll just copy and paste it. It's very little. Just a little bit of resets, adding some padding to the body, and then adding some margin and padding to the button. Very simple stuff. Next, we're going to create a log out button. So back into components, create a new file, log out button.js. All right, and then we have to import from here as well. We can just copy that. And then in here, we're going to get a const, and we're going to grab, instead of the login, we're going to grab logout from the use Auth0 hook. All right, and then in here, again, we're going to have a button, and then on click, we're going to have an arrow function and log out. Very simple. And we'll just name this log out. We'll save that and go to our app. Now we'll include LogoutButton. And of course, we need to wrap this. So we'll just wrap this in a fragment. Now we'll save that and go back to our app. Now we have login and log out. So let's log out. And then we'll log in. Now that we've logged out, you can see what this should look like initially. You have the option to sign in with Google, or just type in your email and your password. So I'll use Google. And now we have to authorize the app. And now we're logged in. So what can we do with this information? Now that we know that the user is logged in, we can now give them access to parts of the app that they would not normally have access to if they were not logged in. So let's create another component. We'll call it profile. We're going to import Auth0 again. Then we'll create our const. This time we're going to grab user. And we're going to make that equal to our use Auth0 hook. And now we can return a bunch of information. So in this div, let's just return json.stringify, and then we'll pass in that user. We'll say null and 2. All right, we'll save that. Let's go back to our app and let's bring that in. So we'll just add that below here. Profile. All right, save that. And let's go back to our app. Oops, I misspelled use Auth0. Let's go back and fix that. It's in profile right there. Use Auth0, typo. Typos happen all of the time. All right, now we're working. We have a false. That is because the user is not logged in. We don't have a user yet. So let's log in. There we go. Now we have all of our information. Let's make this a little bit prettier because that's hard to read. We'll go back. This is not something that you have to do, but I'm going to start a new console and I'm going to add a new package, npm I React.js pretty. This is definitely optional. All right, let's close the terminal. Then in our profile here, we're going to import JSON pretty from React.js pretty. And now what we can do is within this div, let's just, we'll add JSON pretty. And we have to pass it some data. So we'll say data equals user. Close that out. And let's just comment this one out. So let's open the terminal, close this terminal, and let's stop that one, Control C, and then npm start again. We have to restart it. All right, now let's log in. And there we go. Now we have the user's information. So we have the name, nickname, name altogether. We have a picture, locale, updated, email, email verified, and then this is the unique ID for this user. It tells us first what platform the user authenticated with, and then it gives us their ID. So within our app, we can use this for user-specific things such as saving settings, or if the user uploads files or photos, we can use this to track what belongs to which user. So now I want to render some of this information, and I also want to not show login if I'm logged in, and I want to show only log out when I am logged in, right? So let's go back and let's do some of that. So let's close the terminal. So in here, we have the user. So we could do image, and then our source, that would equal user.picture. And then we could set our alt to equal user.name. And then let's set an h2. And within that, we could say user.name. And then a paragraph. And we could say user.email. Oh, I have to close this out. There we go. All right, if we go back to our app, we should have some more information. So the issue here, picture is not defined because we're not logged in. So we need to first find out, is the user logged in? And we only want to display this information if the user is logged in. So we can easily do that by pulling another property out. So we'll pull out is authenticated. Pretty simple. And now we're only going to render this if the user is authenticated. Let's move that over and down. We're going to say is authenticated. If that's true, then let's render all of this. Save that and go back. Now it's working. The user is not authenticated. So now let's log in. And now the user's authenticated. Wow, that's really big. Let me scroll out. Now the user's logged in and we have that information. Okay, let's fix that image. I'm not trying to do much CSS here, but that image is crazy big. Let's just say image width 120 pixels. Save that, go back. Much better. Now we can zoom in a bit and we can see all of the information. All right, so now let's work on these buttons. So we can do the same thing. So we'll go here, we'll say, we'll bring in is authenticated. And then if the user is not is authenticated, right? So not authenticated, then we'll do this. And then basically the same thing. We can copy this, go to the logout button. If the user is authenticated, then show the logout button. And of course, we still need to bring it in as well, is authenticated. All right, so let's go back to our app. Now we only see a login button because we're not logged in. And now we see the logout button. And if you noticed very quickly, it said login and then it said logout, right? So it re-rendered. So I want to fix that. Let's go back into our app. We're going to go to app.js and we're going to import Auth0 here as well. Import use Auth0 from Auth0 React. So within our app, we're going to create const and we're going to pull out is loading. So that's another thing that we can pull out of the use Auth0 hook. And then we'll say if is loading, then we want to return. We'll just return a div that says loading. Just very simple. All right, so if it's loading, this is what we're going to get. If it's not loading, then this is what we're going to get. And why is that a div? That's strange. Okay, so this is what we'll get if it is not loading. All right, let's save that. Go back to our app. All right, let's log in and pay attention to that button there. If you saw just for a second there, it said loading and then log out. All right, well, that's the basics of adding authentication to React, but we've only scratched the surface of what's possible with Auth0. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to learn more about authentication. Like this video to help me out and subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this.